Unheard mobile recording studio. It's basically a fish tank with some very important fishes in it at the moment. And we've got Mr. Alan Parsons in here. How many people know Mr. Alan Parsons out there?
Oh.
Yep. There you go. Alan is probably one of the most influential sound pioneers of our time, if you ask me. I'm a big fan of all the work that you've done. Obviously, you know, Abbey Road, cutting your teeth on that early on in your career, and then Dark Side of the Moon, one of my all-time favorite albums of all time. I want to dig into all of that. We've also got Julian Kolbeck in the house, and Julian is working with Alan on many different projects. He's also written 487,000 books and one cooking book. We'll get into that, and we'll get into the school and the master classes and all the things you're doing. But first of all, let's talk about the history. We want to hear all about the history, Alan. Where did you start? How did you get into doing what you're doing?
Soon after leaving school, I got a job with EMI, with a branch of EMI Records, which was called Tape Records, and they were making reel-to-reel tapes. You know, probably anybody out there has no idea what a tape looks like. But that led to an interview at Abbey Road, because the two departments were in touch with each other. And in October of '68, I got a job at Abbey Road as a trainee tape operator, tape librarian, tea coffee maker, whatever you want to call it. And I was then assigned to being a fly on the wall on sessions after just a couple of months, and all sort of stemmed from there.
You pretty much went in, taught them a hard lesson on how to do their jobs, and made some records and shook things up.
You kept your mouth shut, I think, at that stage.
I had some very good people to train me. You know,
Albie?
Some of the best. I just turned 19.
Man. Yeah. So, sitting in the room with the boys, the Beatles, at 19 years old, you must have been kind of beside yourself in a sense to just, I mean, very talented guys. Maybe you guys have heard of the Beatles. I know they've been around a minute, wrote a few songs. What sort of...
kids say, this guy Paul McCartney, I hear he used to be in a band.
Don't you love when somebody actually meets Paul McCartney and is like, and what do you do? I mean, somebody's got to have done it, right? That person doesn't live on planet Earth, but I'm sure they did. So what was the process like? I mean, you're in the studio with the Beatles, everybody's running around. Did they just plug them in and they played everything? I mean, what was...
They were attempting to do a live album, performing everything in one take, but in a studio environment, because they felt that on Pepper and the White Album that they'd just been too analytical and spending endless hours on one sound or one guitar solo or one vocal or whatever. They wanted it to be one, a single performance, and that's what Let It Be became. I was sent down from Abbey Road to take part in the proceedings down there. They didn't have an adequate staff. They didn't have adequate equipment, so Abbey Road was brought in to supply consoles and me as a tape operator. So that's how it all started.
One of the things that I think is really important to note about you and how you produce and engineer music is, these days you have every bang and whistle. Julie and I were talking about this. You can do everything under the sun. You can pitch shift things. You can make it perfect. You can grid it out. You have a really pure musical principle about you where you find the sound at its source, right? And that's where the magic is. It's not about what you can do later. It's about what you can get now, in some senses, right?
I'm very into getting the sound at the source right and the performance right at the source, and I extend that to trying to get people to interact with each other. I never do a track without, say, 3 or 4 people playing together.
Yeah.
Too many records are made with starting with a drum machine, and then add a bass line, and then add a loop here, and add a sample there. But I still maintain that having a band interacting with each other is always the way to go.
So there's different kinds of producers and engineers that come in and drive a session. That they go, I want you to do this. I want you to do that. What I've heard, and I may be wrong, is that you're more of a communicator. You say, how can we do this together? How can we take what you hear in your head and how can I help evolve it?
You can't be a sort of dictatorial producer. Nobody wants that. The producer has to be one of a team and have the respect of the artist he's working with. And likewise, the artist should have the respect of, have equal respect for the producer. It is a team effort.
I'm pretty sure that you have equal respect from every artist I've ever met, and probably everyone standing out there right now. Am I lying? Huh? The contribution that you've made to the audio community. I mean, we're here in Dynaudio, obviously, which is, very high-end quality, and the contribution that you've made has been very substantial as an artist and as a producer. Let's talk a little bit about your artist career. Let's talk about hitting the stage. You're still out doing it. You're traveling all over the world. I saw you at the Saban Theater just a while ago. Killed that.
We're playing it again later this year. I think in March. Maybe it's February. Maybe coming right up.
Where, in fact, I should mention as a side note, I was with a dear friend of ours, Ken Rose, and he handed you your Grammy on stage. You didn't know that was coming. It was a pretty cool moment. By all intents and purposes, very humble man, but got put on the spot, and there was the Grammy. Unfortunately,
he didn't give it to me on stage because I was on a cruise called the On the Blue Cruise in the Caribbean.
Oh, you know whose he gave to you? He gave you Casey Porter's as a temporary Grammy at the Saban. Remember this?
Yes.
So your Grammy came later.
There was some fake Grammy
there was
presentations going on.
Hollywood moments.
But I got the news that we had won while the lifeboat drill was going on this cruise. So
there's a song in that.
We were watching on our cell phones, watching the show, and then suddenly the name Alan Parsons came up as the winner of the Surround Grammy, and a lot of people went hey, like that, and then
that's amazing.
The ship staff was slightly puzzled.
So tell me about your new project. You've got a new. I shouldn't use the word project because that's.
Well, it's still. we still play live as the Alan Parsons Live project, but the Alan Parsons project is technically in the past. I make records as Alan Parsons these days.
All right. So new record coming out. You're in the process of doing it.
New record actually came out in April. It's called The Secret. And it's based on one of my passions in life, which is magic.
Yes, that's why I hear you're a magician. I said he's a magician before we went on camera at making money materialize for making music, which is, as many musicians know now.
And when these cameras get switched off, all these people are going to disappear.
Yes, he's going to make you all disappear in about 10 minutes. We've got Julian Colbeck in the house. You guys are working on many different things together, one of which is really exciting, is your master class. A boutique amount of people can come and spend time with Alan and have an immersive experience learning how he does what he does. Can you tell us a bit about that, Julian?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, I apologise for my voice. I don't normally sound quite this whiskey-laden, and sadly without the whiskey.
It's Nam, buddy. We forgive you.
Exactly. But I mean, there's
Everybody
a lot
has to shout.
Yeah, really. There's a lot of kind of learning materials out there, but in a way, like making a record, there is nothing like the experience of looking over someone's shoulder, seeing how things are done, being in the room. And so we hold these pretty intimate classes, maybe 15, 20 people, and you actually get to make a record with Alan. And you're in the room, he's saying, hey, EQ the piano, or set this mic. And
it's the ultimate nightmare for artists, of course, having 20 potential producers in the room at the same time. But we rise above that. It works fine, and it's all in support of the main reason we do these things. It's in support of our DVD series and book known as The Art and Science of Sound Recording, and you can all come and see the booth. It's somewhere in the 16,000s, isn't it?
16320.
16320. So
yeah, so it's an educational
We'd love to
program.
see you.
How to record, And someone like Alan, who has been there since, analog days and 4-track, 8-track, etc., etc., the lessons that he learned are still very relevant to today in terms of actually how you do get a good sound, how you mic an instrument. And so it's good fun.
Speaking of, pioneering in the music world, you were involved in early MIDI creation and technology, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. MIDI, in fact, I think Alan and I made the first record, the session that we worked on together. Alan's a producer and me as a keyboard player. Was in like 1985, and I think we used the first, as they called them then, sequencer, MIDI sequencer, and it was Steinberg. And I remember calling up Charlie Steinberg, who was the owner of the company, in Germany at night, going, how does this work? What do you do here? And he's going, well, I think, it was very hairy days, but MIDI enabled people. It kind of decoupled the performance from a recording. Mm-hmm. And so you could record something in MIDI and then change the sounds. And that was completely revolutionary at the time. And
I think Steinberg would be the first to admit that there were bugs, though.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of crashes.
Herd of bugs, absolutely. But, it opened a lot of doors, which are still continuing to open today. And in fact, MIDI 2.0 has just been kind of officially launched at the beginning of NAMM. And that's some 35 years after MIDI first came out. So it's still a very relevant technology.
Well, and I would say that MIDI has actually created an entirely new genre of music. The whole DJ scene right now.
Absolutely.
You've got guys up there with a thumb drive and MIDI gear.
Absolutely.
Fill in arenas.
No, take away MIDI, take away whole genres of music. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't have had that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what, so this school that you're involved in a school, right? Is this a physical location as well?
Not really. Alan can speak to that. He has a brand new studio, and we do hold some of the master classes there. So,
yeah, I've recently built a studio where I recorded The Secret, actually, on my property in Santa Barbara, and it is to be run as a commercial studio. We're just about to launch a website to make it known that it's there for anybody that wants to come to beautiful Santa Barbara and make a record. So
I'll be there Tuesday. What time? You think like about 10? I'll be there. So let's talk a little bit about. I just got to talk to you about Dark Side of the Moon. I know you probably talked about it a billion times, but can we talk a little bit about that experience for you?
What do you want to know?
Everything.
Well,
I want to know how you did it. The personalities involved.
It was all the band were getting on like a house on fire. Everybody was happy. Everybody was enjoying the recording experience, and I was very, very proud to be a part of it. And I think it was a good team, that I had with Pink Floyd, and it's actually somewhat lamentable that was the only album we did together.
Yeah.
With me as at the helm as engineer. I did mix the previous album, Atom Heart Mother. I did the mixing on that, but not the recording. But yeah, they offered me a job at the end of it all when it was at number one on the charts all over the world. But my career as a producer had already started, so I did turn them down. And it was the right decision ultimately.
Well, I want to open up for a couple questions. If anybody has any questions out there, anybody want to have an opportunity to ask a question?
You have to use sign language, do you? We can't hear you.
You can ask a question if you buy all of Julian Kolbeck's books.
Yeah, please. He squeaked.
And then you can ask a question. Do we have a microphone out front? Where's Flex at? There he is. Got the gold mic. Do you mind taking a couple questions?
No, that's fine.
Who's up for question? This guy.
And then we're going to let Ralph do a drum solo for everybody over here.
On Tales of Mystery and Imagination, how did you handle the orchestra?
I knew that if I was going to make a record with my own name, that it would have fairly substantial orchestral content. Thankfully, I had the ideal guy to do the arrangements, Andrew Powell, who I'd worked with Cockney Rebel, and And Pilot, he actually did the arrangements for that song Magic, which everybody knows. Oh, ho, ho, it's magic. So we researched quite heavily the work of Claude Debussy, who had written a work based on an Edgar Allan Poe story, The Fall of the House of Usher. And we sort of borrowed from that and extended that. And it became a true concept album. And I was very proud of it at the time. It's still to this day, my first album is my favorite album.
Got one more question here.
Could you speak to the creative process in creating that iconic 7-sound loop in the beginning of Money, the tape loop?
What did he say?
He said, can you speak to the iconic process or something of that sort of creating the iconic loop at the start of Money?
Oh, right.
Floyd.
Well, we did have a demo. That, I think Roger and Nick had made a demo of this of a number of sound effects, which had literally just been spliced together on tape. And we did the same thing. We just got a bunch of individual sounds, like the sound of a bag of money being dropped, coins being thrown in the air. One of the sounds was allegedly tearing a £100 note up, but of course it was just a piece of paper. And we tried splicing them all together, but we found that to be perfectly rhythmic, the only way to do it was to physically measure each length of tape. And it was whatever it was, like 4 3/8 inches for this sound, 4 3/8 inches for that sound, 4 3/8 inches for that sound, splice them together, and then literally making a continuous loop, which was recorded from 1/4 inch onto, actually it was on 4-track, it was on 4-track 1 inch, then it was transferred to the 24-track master.
That's an exact example of how much easier it is now to cheat.
Oh,
right? Like,
it would have taken a minute and a half in Pro Tools.
Yeah.
It took an entire afternoon to do that.
That's awesome.
But quite an afternoon. Yeah.
Good question, man. That's good. Anybody else want to ask any questions here of Alan and Julian?
One quick question. Nice to meet you, by the way, through the glass door.
A little louder, I can hardly hear.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Not that
Sorry.
loud.
I'm just wondering, during the process of making Dark Side of the Moon, you obviously did you know you were part of something like, I don't know, life-changing for a lot of people, or was it just very organic and, just genuine from the soul, I know you probably answered so many times, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I think we all recognize that it was Pink Floyd's best work to date, but who knew that I would be talking about it 50 years later? It was it was a fun experience, and it was iconic in many respects, and I'm proud of my association with it.
So obviously, Mr. Alan Parsons
Honestly,
in the house.
I have a question. Being
Great,
a
Flex
sound
has a question.
engineer, I have a question for Mr. Alan Parsons. I'm a sound engineer, and you're one of the founding for me being on this position. And the question is, when you did Old and Wise, were you thinking about being on your position where you are today? Because, as I would say, you are pretty wise.
If I had written the lyric, possibly, but I didn't. So it was my long-standing partner, Eric Wolfson, who wrote the lyrics. A lot of people have favoured using Old and Wise at funerals, which is not particularly a cheering concept, but no, a lot of people have been touched by that song, and I'm glad to have been a part of it.
I would say that people have been touched by most all of your songs and your work in many different aspects. I mean, it's one thing to just do music, right? It's another thing to do music that's so rich and deep and inspired and, like you just mentioned, creative with the loops and things that lasts this long. It's not an accident. So, No, thank you so much for being here and talking to us about this. Thank you, Julian, for being here and for making it all happen. I know you guys have a stacked schedule and you got to get off to more of these, but I really appreciate y'all being here. Is there anything else that we should talk about that's coming up right now? I know you've got so many projects. The master classes, where can they find out about the master classes?
Absolutely.
The website is called artandscienceofsound.com. If you just Google Art and Science and my name, you should find it.
It'll come up.
But that's the correct website, www.artandscienceofsound.com. My website is alanparsons.com. All the upcoming live shows are there. And we are on tour for the rest of this year. We're doing from the summer onwards, we are doing a anniversary of the Tone of a Friendly Card tour. It's the 40th anniversary, believe it or not, of Tone of a Friendly Card. So,
Aren't you playing Anaheim in the next?
we are playing Anaheim. Yeah, it's coming right up next month. So.
You have a slamming band too. Can you name
Really?
some of the guys in the band? I mean, the band is
Absolutely not. They'll ask for more money.
don't do that. Don't empower him.
They're an amazing band.
PJ Olsen, who is the frontman singer, he's been with us, I think, 16 years now, and we've had a number of changes in the rest of the band. The bass player is Guy Erez. He's from Israel, living in Sherman Oaks, California.
The lovely Sherman Oaks.
Drummer is Danny Thompson, also from LA. Keyboard player Tom Brooks, also Californian. Some of the other guys come from Nashville. Dan Tracy, the second guitarist, and also a great singer, and Todd Cooper, who plays sax and does some really good vocal work as well. I think I've mentioned everybody. Yeah.
Speaking of great players, it's hard to ignore that Ralph Johnson from Earth, Wind & Fire is sitting right there chilling out with us in here. You worked with Earth, Wind & Fire at one point, yeah? On something?
Very recently. Well, only one original member, right? Al
McKay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's a great guitarist. And he's out with an outfit he calls the Earth, Wind & Fire Experience. And it was, I mean, they stole the show. They were great. And it was at an event called the Night of the Proms in Germany, which is a long-established series of shows, happens every year. And me and Todd and PJ were there with an amazing rhythm section, house band, and full symphony orchestra and full choir. It's a great thing to do.
Something to see. I'm speaking with Alan Parsons here. We're at Dynaudio Unheard. Obviously, Alan has done a body of work that is undisputably some of the best music that we have in our lifetimes. We have Mr. Julian Kolbeck here. Julian and Alan have a master class that they have that you can find if you know how to use Google, and if you don't, well, then we have real issues. You guys, thank you so much for coming here. I appreciate you being a part of this. It means so much to me personally just to sit and talk to you both about this. That's it. That's all we got. Dynaudio Unheard, NAMM 2020, Alan Parsons, Julian Kolbeck.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.